moving on that if you want to take advantage of the offer. But more interestingly, let's hear from Kelly about the technical updates.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, everyone. Let me drop the link to the report in the chat here and share my screen. All right. I guess the first thing I want to say is we met last week as a development team in Poland, and how awesome that opportunity was and how good the outcomes of that experience are. I just want to reiterate and share what a privilege it is to work with this team, not only in terms of the people that they are and the quality of software developers that they are, but the way that they work together is truly it's humbling and it's really awesome. I've worked within a lot of organizations and with a lot of groups, and this is a very well functioning group of people, and it's just such a privilege, and I really had a good time. I think we all had a really good time, and came out of it with a good sense of purpose, a renewed sense of energy when you get to share the room with the people that you work with so closely. So really grateful for that opportunity. And as I go through this report, I will highlight spaces where I think our work together last week has benefited the project, and things you'll start to see. So the first thing I want to talk about is we are just started Sprint 29, and our priorities are listed here. For the consensus team, there's some bugs in the Genesis ceremony and in network joining that we're working through. We are continuing on the implementation of validator incentives and slashing. For the node team, priorities include user experience improvements and optimizations. Node in general is basically done, but there's room for improvement, and we really benefit from hearing the feedback of node users for ways to prioritize those improvements. So thank you for that feedback when you share it either in Discord or in our community test sessions. The rolling team is working to complete the work to bridge cost accounting with the wallet and the proof of stake contract. We're starting the foundational work on the multi-sig wallet, and there's some bug fixes that they're working on. And then the RSpace team's priorities for this particular sprint are to test and release their innovated RSpace, and complete the analysis of bloat and actually start to take action related to that analysis. So that's what we're working on over the next 2 weeks. That's our focus. We are working towards the release of our node 9.5. We released 9.4 earlier this week, and you're welcome to take a look at that release plan to find out what's going into that release. Testnet is live. Not only is it live, but it's live and stable. You guys don't have the benefit of seeing on the back end the work that goes into monitoring the testnet, and the fact that Tomasz is pretty much on call 24/7 to respond to things that go wrong in testnet. And it was just so great last week to have that the alarms were very silent. So we're really in a very good place related to the stability of our validators operating on the public testnet such as it is. So that's really good news there. And of course, we did upgrade testnet this week with 9.4, and you're welcome to take a look at that. If you're a testnet user, I encourage you to get on testnet and just enjoy the flow of logs coming to your console. You're going to be so pleased and how much more quiet that is and more informative. So enjoy that. We do plan on running a community test tomorrow where I will walk through in detail the things that are in 9.4 and the way that shows up in testnet. So if you're interested in that, you're welcome to come take a look at that. It'll be a demonstration and a talk through, and also we'll address any questions people are having related to their use of testnet. More specifically, so the consensus team is discussing the validator incentives and Casper. This has to do with economics. It's a conversation that's been ongoing for quite a long time. Getting economics right is not insignificant, and we're kind of working at it on 2 levels. So first and foremost, we are hear loud and clear the desire to get to a mainnet launch as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, we have to implement some version of validator incentives and economics. And it's not likely to be perfect. And it's what we can get done in the time that we have allotted to do it. But that also then speaks to the second way that we're working towards this. We know that there's going to be room for improvement. We know that there's going to be opportunities to improve validator incentives and rewards. And so as we are having these conversations, we are thinking of, well, what will be in Mercury and what will come next, to make sure that we are capturing all of the ideas and things that we would like to do going forward. So as a team, we have agreed to we have a series of 4 meetings. We had the first one this week. We will have 3 more. And we've set that as our timeline to decide truly what will be in Mercury. Because we have to decide and we have to then have time to implement it. But also as part of that conversation, as I mentioned, we will continue to capture, this might be a better idea for the future when we have more time to deliver it. So very grateful for the team and as well as community members that are participating in that conversation. Also in consensus, we have resolved bug 3250. This was a bug in a Genesis ceremony where validators were not receiving the approved block. In addition to solving this bug, it also provided an opportunity to do a fair amount of refactoring in the Casper engine. So I'm very grateful for Pavel for his work there. One of the outcomes of that is we saw an approximate 10-minute reduction in the time required to run one of our integration tests that runs basically a successful Genesis ceremony. And that's huge. To find a 10-minute savings because we've improved the Casper engine is really awesome stuff. So in addition to having that nice bug fix, we also like the performance improvement there. Kent has his slashing PR in and under review, and so that is going well. And we are continuing discussions about ways to resolve the bug 3218, and this is a failure to receive a Genesis block. It is not an uncommon experience on the public testnet. So what happens is you start up a node, you bootstrap to one of the known validators, and your node asks for an approved block, and what it appears to be happening is somehow that message is dropped, and of course you then don't receive the approved block, and if you don't receive the approved block, you don't instantiate Casper, and it's really all you have now is a node that makes friends with other peers on the network, but no block passing is happening for you, which is disappointing. What we've done so far related to 3218 is add, there's 2 PRs in that added a significant amount of messaging in Casper to give us a better sense of what was happening. So now we can say very clearly message dropping is happening. And we're having conversations related to, well, what can we do to help resolve that or to improve that experience for node operators? Something we talked about in stand up today, and we'll continue that conversation. I will say this, if you are using PubNet and you experience this problem, and I did yesterday, the best thing to do would be to kill your node and then to restart. And given a couple of restarts, you will tend to be successful in getting that Genesis block. I know that's a crappy user experience, but that's where we are right now. And you can typically resolve that by just killing your node and restarting. The node team is working to move the proposed API to an internal port. This will help ensure that validators cannot be reached from other nodes to queue them to propose. It's something that we implemented early on because it was a way that we needed to be able to interact with validators to encourage them to propose when needed, but that's not a mainnet solution. And so we are in the process of moving the propose to an internal port so that external nodes can't control that for our validators. There is a PR in review that supports the generation of public-private key pairs via the command line. If you're a node user and have had to start up a standalone node that generates the key pairs, then kill that node, then get the key pairs and restart your node, you're going to really love this. This is going to be really fantastic. You'll just be able to do that directly from the command line. I'm really looking forward to giving you guys access to that. There's another PR in review that completes the circuit breaker for big messages. This is work that started previously, but basically, when big messages come streaming through, we don't want that to take down a node. And that's the work that's covered in RChain 2792. And Sebastian is working on that. And then we have also started to address a bug that it fills up logs with messages when the queue for streaming messages is full. And like by fill up, I mean like your logs are just overflowing, every 2 seconds. It's a horrible experience. So we have a plan in place to address that bug with RChain 3240, and Sebastian has just picked that up as of this morning. So looking forward to that. Rolling team. Arturo is working to complete the progress to bridge the cost accounting, wallets, and the proof of stake contract. This is a part of being able to truly deliver the complete functionality of cost accounting and to use the token on the platform as a utility token. It's not insignificant work. There's a lot of parts that are part of this. There are a lot of things that need to be updated, including our test suite, in order to bring this into the project. But we met as a team even before the dev retreat to talk about this and estimate the work required. We estimate that this work will get done in this sprint, and so far we are very much on track for that. So I'm looking forward to getting this tied off and done. We also started work to lay the groundwork for the implementation of the Multi-Sig wallet. Artur provided a wonderful document, and it's highlighted here, the draft Multi-Sig vault. There are some changes coming to it based on our conversation during last week's dev retreat. But basically, we have a plan in place. We have a design that the team agrees on, and work has started in this sprint to lay the groundwork for that. And that's largely in the form of the on-chain identity token that Tim is working on. And then we have Joseph investigating several bugs related to rolling in both cost accounting and string interpolation in rolling. So that's what that team is working on for this sprint. Things are in progress. RSpace, we are so close to getting that renovated RSpace into the platform and ready for you guys to use. The steps that we're taking right now, Wukash is working to get it into our development test suite and into the performance test harness to see, make sure it does what we think it's going to do. If this goes well, and so far we anticipate that it will, the next step will be to run the new RSpace in our development test net for at least 48 hours, and we can pound it in that environment. And then if that goes well, we will very quickly release it to the public testnet. So the happy path would be a release of our node 9.5 next week. That would include RSpace, and that would allow us to update the public testnet to take advantage of the renovated RSpace. So please join me in wishing the team all the best of luck there. Should it not go well, things that might happen, we can certainly run into bugs. And when we run into bugs, we'll just have to figure out how to address those, and that would change that timeline. But that's where we are as of today. A big part of our development retreat last week was to have a broad conversation about the impact of what we call bloat happening in the tuple space related to rolling. And so we spent a considerable amount of time brainstorming and thinking about what we were observing, not only in our development test nets, but also in some preliminary analysis that Dom did in the tuple space, and had an opportunity to come back to that conversation several times as we tried to figure out what to do and then prioritize how to do it. So here's what we came up with. Dom has and started immediately on a deeper analysis of what's happening in the tuple space, specifically during the execution of contracts like token transfers. And he has done a lot of this and more or less complete, and has some documentation related to his findings there. He's also pivoting now to do that same type of analysis in the renovated RSpace so that we can see what's happening in there. And his preliminary take as of stand up this morning was, fairly optimistic in terms of improvements already using the renovated RSpace. So that is certainly good news there. Also out of our dev retreat, we decided to introduce an encoder decoder for rolling as a way to address bloat, and then to continue the investigation and the performance of the AST and the rolling interpreter. So that's our plan right now, to continue to investigate and address bloat. It's a bit of a wild card issue, to tell you the truth, that there's, you don't know what you don't know, and when you know it, then you have to address it. And so, I'm really grateful for the teams in ongoing conversation about this, and then the way that we talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it quickly is pretty important. So that is what the RSpace team is working on this week. The SRE team is completing some improvements to our performance test harness. It includes the deployment of InfluxDB instead of Prometheus, as well as a revision to the automation for how we trigger the harness to do its thing. So previously we had a bot in Discord, and you could call the bot and cue the performance harness to run. We've now switched that over so that it is automated on any commit to the code base. So we have a process in place now where we're going to measure performance on every commit, and use that as a way to certainly understand what our code changes are doing, but also as a way to implement a way to fight regression. So that is in a good shape. And then also one of the outcomes, what a part of our development retreat last week was talking very specifically about what the hardening effort is going to be for Mercury. And so just as a little bit of background, our goal right now is to complete what we call the Mercury release. That's feature complete, and to address as many of the bugs as we can find, and get that Mercury release done. When that Mercury release is done, we need to start a hardening effort, and it's going to happen on a variety of fronts using a variety of tools and processes. But basically, that's the part of the process where we make sure that the platform does what it needs to do and behaves well in a variety of conditions. And so to provide that hardening support, we're going to take it again in several ways. One is we are using white block. We have a test that's running in white block, and we have the capability of running additional tests. So white block plays a part in our hardening effort. We also talked about the other types of networks that we could create, largely based on the networks that we already have in place, and the types of testing that we would run on those networks as part of the hardening effort. So the development team put their heads together. They made some recommendations on what would be the highest priority types of tests to run, and immediately the SRE team is starting work to make sure that that infrastructure is in place. This sprint includes Network 1, which has nodes being killed randomly. They're going to build out this infrastructure and make sure that we have the test automation in place, and so that when we do get to the place where we're ready to start hardening, we're ready. And that's a big important focus of the SRE team. Finally, and this is going to make Ed so very happy. Ed, we are making a change to the Rev address based on decisions we made during the dev retreat, and that primary decision is that they will now be based on the elliptic curve SecP256K1 instead of the current ED25519. And this came out of a couple reasons, but one is that we want it to be similar, and we've heard a lot of feedback about user desires for our addresses to be similar to that of Ethereum. But we also had to deal with the issue of being able to issue Rev at Genesis based on rock balances. And so we will be changing that curve. We will also be changing the format, so it's an algorithm that shares the first few steps that Ethereum has, and that will then support the claiming of Genesis issued Rev based on rock at the launch of mainnet. So that work is in progress. It's not in there yet. Are there any questions or requests for more feedback?
I have a general question. Go for it, Jim. Go for it.
Will that allow for the Ethereum simplify the wallets to use the libraries that support Ethereum, so that it can be done in the browser?
I don't know. Chris, can you help me out here?
Yeah, to some degree. We still are using the Blake hash algorithm, so I believe there's still that, I guess, extra burden which isn't shared with Ethereum. So you still need to get that figured out. But the rest of it, you'd be able to use the same libraries that Ethereum uses for signing.
Thank you.
And I just have a general question. How long does the team need to complete the hardening? Is it 8 weeks, 4 weeks?
The answer is we don't know yet, and it's a wild card question. So what we do have are we have some final decisions to make, but we do have a document that shows what our acceptance criteria for for demonstrating that the Mercury release is ready and is done. So these are concrete acceptance criteria. When you can meet these, then the platform is good to go. One of those acceptance criteria is for a period of 3 weeks not having a critical bug. And so, just make sure I'm really clear. So over a period of 3 weeks, the platform runs in a public test net and in the other network environments and does not reveal a critical bug. And that's one of the criteria that would constitute done. So you can't really put a time around, how long is hardening going to take, but what you can be very concrete about is these are the acceptance criteria for what constitutes us being okay with saying Mercury is ready for a mainnet.
Cool. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly. That was very comprehensive and much appreciated. I also want to mention that with respect to the hardening phase, I think everyone got on board with the idea of wide and deep. So in the sense that we run lots of networks at the same time, each of which is testing for different things. So one is testing for random node failures, another is testing for message dropping and bursty behavior and things like that. So we have different test scenarios across a range of different networks, which are all running simultaneously. And this is one of the ways in which we will get hardening to happen faster, because we can, first of all, we separate and isolate different conditions. And then once we feel like we have stability across a range of these different separated and isolated network conditions, then we can begin to combine them. So for example, we start looking at random node failure with packet loss and things like that. So this was, I was happy to see that I think the team embraced this idea with respect to the hardening. I also want to echo Kelly's comments about the pardon me, the professionalism of the team. I was really excited by not only the focus on the present work, but the attention to making sure that we're ready for the future. Was just one of many proposals that were quite interesting and worth considering. Artur had a very nice proposal for an applicative do style syntax couched in the for comprehension framework that I think would be a very nice future feature for Rolang. So the team is quite excited about not just what we're doing now, but the potential for the platform and starting to roll out some really good proposals. And this is making me no end of happy. It's really good to see this kind of engagement, and I hope that the wider community can start to feel this way. They can start looking at, this is an open source project, and it would be perfectly reasonable if someone wanted to go and mock up or make a branch where there's an applicative do form of the for comprehension and Rolang, or any other exploratory features, and then get those back to the dev team. Right, this would greatly accelerate all future development. So it would be great to have that kind of engagement on the project. With that, I really have to. I'm sorry, I have to get off.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we can end it here. Okay. All right. I'm gonna end it, and we can stay in this room for a little bit and chat if offline if you guys want to.